Welcome to Patty's Aquatics and welcome to Beyond the Dirt. Now, if you're not familiar with this video series, this is episode 2. It basically is an unscripted, unfiltered opinion piece of just raw opinions. What is going to happen is I'm thinking of a subject, I'm going to throw this camera in front of me and I'm just going to talk. Whatever comes out of my mouth comes out of my mouth. You're going to probably hear a little bit of mumbling, a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel. So in today's episode, really, I was in a big box store the other day picking up some frozen brine shrimp, and it got me thinking as I was looking around, is the aquarium industry setting beginners up to fail? That is something I really want to touch on. So if you want to hear my opinion, better get ready because this is Beyond the Dirt. So when I say the aquarium industry is setting beginners up to fail, I'm talking about big box stores, talking about manufacturers in the aquarium industry, talking about some YouTube channels and creators, talking about Facebook groups in particular, some forums. I believe they all kind of play a role within it. At first, I'm going to talk about big box stores. But at first, I want to say that I know that they're not all bad. I know that there's some good employees within them, but I really feel that big box stores, the way that they're set up, is to make hobbyists dependent on them rather than them succeed. So let's say you're a new hobbyist and you're walking into one of these stores, you've never kept fish or a tank or anything, you know zilch about what you're doing walking into one of these places. So you're probably going to gravitate to one of those starter kits. You know, that's what I did in the mid 90s. It was the first thing I ever bought. And let's go with a 20 gallon because that's what I seen a couple years ago when I was looking at one of these stores because, well, I was flabbergasted by what I seen for stocking ideas that they had printed on that box. It said you should put an angelfish, you could put a common or a pleco, which we all know is going to be a common pleco, which gets big, and I think it said 6 guppies. So right off the bat, that's borderline sabotage. You're setting them up to fail. Now they bring this starter kit home and they set it all up, then they go back to the store and they buy those fish. Put them in their tank. Everything looks great for that first week. They're loving it. That's when the cloudy water sets in. They're getting a bacteria bloom, but they don't understand why. They're thinking to themselves, what did I do wrong for this to happen? So what do? They go back to that fish store. Now they're buying chemicals. They're buying water clarifiers, putting it in their tanks to try to get rid of that cloudy water, but it's not going away. Well, because they're doing an in-fish cycle. They have no idea what they were doing because they had no education on the nitrogen cycle. So now at this point, you're probably losing fish. So they're probably going back to the fish store and buying new fish and trying to understand why. Well, in the meantime, those beginner fish, those guppies you probably bought, they're mass bred, probably have terrible genetics, and they're probably dying on top of that as well. So you're probably going back to the fish store again and buying more fish. In the meantime, you still have cloudy water, and your filter is probably now saying it's been a month, you need to change your filter cartridge according to the box. So you're going back, yes, to that fish store again to buy more cartridges for your filter that are not needed. This is what I'm talking about. A total dependence on big box stores and manufacturers to new hobbyists because they don't know any better, because that's the way they're being taught. And it's on purpose, in my opinion. Look at it like this. I'm not going to get political, but let's say for cancer, for an instance, there would never be a cure for cancer, in my opinion. If there was a cure for cancer, the pharmaceutical company could just give that patient one dose of that medicine and they'd be done. They'd make no more money off of them. With no cure, they can make these people pay for tests and medication the entire time. I know my wife had cancer. It's a bunch of BS. So to use this analogy with this industry, if these companies would give you a starter kit and give you all the information you need to know, give you all the info on nitrogen cycles, how to cycle your tank, and how to be successful, you would have no need for them to keep coming back to buy things from them. Or how it is now, they give you limited information of what you need. They want you to keep coming back to be dependent on them, keep coming back to buy chemicals, keep coming back to buy fish, keep coming back to buy supplies instead of helping them from the beginning. And that's my biggest issue when it comes to these big box stores and manufacturers. When it comes to this, I realize their bottom line is about making money, but there should be some accountability when it comes to hobbyists of teaching them what they're doing in order to succeed. Like why can't there be on these starter kits some type of link to a website or their own YouTube channel explaining really what the nitrogen cycle is, explaining how they can be successful in starting these tanks up? I mean, they have all the literature in there of how to set up these tanks. Why can't they have that? Well, we all know why, because that's the bottom line. They won't make money off of these people then. And that's what my biggest issue is with this industry. Also, let's say this new hobbyist who had this 20-gallon tank and's got cloudy water and dying fish now in this day and age goes to social media, goes to YouTube, Facebook, is trying to find answers. Why is this happening to me? What am I doing wrong is probably what they're thinking. So let's just say, for instance, they go to Facebook. Okay, they're going to go to one of the groups and type in, I have these fish in this tank. I got cloudy water and fish are dying. Please help. You're going to get people that are going to just talk crap about them, that you're overstocking your tank, that you're a terrible hobbyist. You're going to get people that are going to laugh at you. You're going to get, on top of that, probably 10,000 different suggestions of what you should do. And all of them are going to confuse them and make them probably just want to quit the hobby. And why am I even doing this is probably what they're thinking. And it's a bit frustrating. I've seen some of these Facebook groups and I don't even comment on them. I just find them so ridiculous a lot of times. There's a few of them that are good. So I'm not bashing all Facebook groups. There definitely are some good ones, but there are a lot more bad ones in my opinion. There's some, I'm not going to keep bringing this guy up, but the Father Fish Shoal, I got kicked out of that one, by the way, from my video last time. But, they don't let you talk about anything but the father fish method. I seen one guy ask about fertilizers and they wouldn't let him talk about it because it's not approved by father fish. See, that's what I mean. If you're supposed to be saying that you're there for new hobbyists to help them learn, why wouldn't you teach them why that you're saying you shouldn't use fertilizer then, instead of just telling them you can't talk about it? This is what I'm talking about when people are really misleading newcomers and setting them up to fail. Now let's talk about like YouTube and stuff. Maybe this guy is going to YouTube then, trying to figure out, okay, I'm going to try to find some answers here. Now that's the other problem too. There's 10 billion different creators with 10 different billion opinions, myself included. I don't take myself out of the equation. But it's a matter of trying to find the correct source. Now, I'll tell you this story. The story I'm telling you about this new hobbyist is pretty much me. I got my first aquarium and it was a starter kit back in like 1995. So I've been in this hobby for 30 years and I had no idea what I was doing. I bought this starter kit. I got my blue gravel, my plastic plants, threw them all together, and I bought a piranha. That was my first fish, and I put it in there and I loved it until cloudy water came on. I had no idea what the nitrogen cycle was, no idea why I was getting cloudy water. I don't think there was YouTube at that time. If there was, I had no idea about it. There was online internet, but I didn't really have a computer, nor did I know anything about it. So I really had no idea. I had no way of knowing where education was to really educate myself on that subject. So I just kept going to the fish store and buying water clarifier and kept doing water changes and trying to figure it out. Eventually over time it went away like it would naturally. But like I said, I had no idea about cycling a tank, and years went by. I got multiple tanks and multiple different fish, and I went probably at least 15, 17 years of not knowing anything of what I was doing besides putting fish in a tank, changing my filter cartridges out all the time, in that nature. And I got out of the hobby because I was sick and tired of fish dying. Well, I got back into the hobby a few years later when I was talking to a coworker about his planted tank, and I wanted to do it, but I promised myself that this time I was going to do everything right. I was going to research everything because YouTube was around in there now, and I started watching YouTube. And this is the biggest thing though. You got to find people that you trust. You got to find people that are reliable, that are going to be there to really help you and support you and not just make money off of you. And that's where I came across Corey from Aquarium Co-op. Everyone can have their own opinion about who they like best, but he was mine. I found a nitrogen cycle video of his, and that's how I found him. Watched that video. I learned so much. I actually powered through almost all Aquarium Co-op videos, learning and learning and learning. I was like a sponge, trying to take in as much information as I could. Learning how to make these racks I have, how to hot rod these filters so you don't got to keep replacing those filter cartridges. There was so much I learned from just watching his channel. It made me a better hobbyist. And that's what you have to do if you're new in this hobby, because there are so many other channels out there that are just clickbait. They're controversial. They just want to lure you in to get views and to sucker you into buying their products. You know, I'm not going to keep bringing this guy up, but he is pungent to this conversation, and that is Father Fish. He is the exact opposite, in my opinion. He claims to be an educator. He claims to be a beginner-friendly method, but yet he gives controversial advice. He flip-flops back and forth from what you should do. And like I said, their Facebook group, you can't even talk about anything but his method. How are people supposed to learn from that? You're not. You're no better than the big box store trying to make hobbyists dependent on buying your soil additive and plants and backwards ass maintenance tips that, in my opinion, are just going to set beginners up to fail. Bottom line, use your common sense and do research. Any information that you're taking in or watching or reading or listening to, really use your common sense and do some research on it and tell yourself, does this make sense to me? You know, I've been in this hobby for almost 30 years, like I said, and I still fell for the misinformation and the rhetoric and all that crap. And, you know, I learned from it. So I'll say this as well. We don't need fewer people in this hobby. We need fewer lies. Really, there needs to be some accountability within our hobby for education when it comes to beginners, because we want our hobby to succeed, we want it to thrive, and we want it to continue. We don't want new hobbyists getting tanks, spending money in big box stores and manufacturers and online sources that are just out to get money from them, only for them to quit. You know, that's not the future of the hobby, at least not for me. I think we all should be accountable for what we do and say if we have a platform in this industry. You know, for myself, I have been showing what I've been doing for my experience keeping tanks this entire time and documenting everything, good and bad. And I'm going to continue to do that. I'm going to continue to show you the things I don't like about dirty tanks, some of the things that people like to overlook. But I'm also going to tell you some of the things I like about them. You know, that's just the way that I plan on helping new hobbyists. If there's anyone that has questions, that people have messaged me on Messenger, people have left questions in my comments. I do everything I can to help anyone answer questions. Even if it's something I don't know, I'll do research to try to figure out to help them. And if I just don't know, I'm going to tell them I don't know. Or I give them references to try to find this places out how to figure it out. That's something we all should be doing if we're in this type of platform, in my opinion. But I get there's a lot of people out there that only care about money. And unfortunately, that's a bad thing. And that's the bottom line why I feel the aquarium industry is really out for newcomers to fail. And it's unfortunate. So let me say this. If you agree with me or you don't agree with me, put it in the comments. Let me know what you think. Also, hey, if you have any stories yourself of maybe being duped or misinformation where you've had some failures in this hobby starting out, share them. I would love to hear in the comments really what your thoughts are, or some stories that happened to you, because guess what? Maybe there's someone out there watching this right now that's in this predicament, that's new, doesn't understand what's going on with their tank, and maybe that comment can help them. That's why I do these videos. I do these videos to help share information, and I get to learn from them as well. And I find that just equally as important. So I hope you liked the video. If you did, hit that subscribe button. Greatly appreciated. And this is my opinion, and I'm sticking with it. This is Beyond the Dirt.